How can I contact you? Bob, Robert, Mr. Perez?
My name is Robert, but everybody calls me Bob. Just very informal. You can call me Bob.
Okay, Bob, Vasily, let's start from the beginning. What did you want to become as a child?
As a child, I actually wanted to be a professional baseball player. I've loved baseball my whole life. It was my first love. I was introduced to boxing around the same time, about 5 years old, but I really love baseball. So I would say I would want to be a baseball player.
And how was your childhood? How did your environment influence you?
You know, um, I was the only child. My father provided for my mother and myself. He worked very hard. We didn't have a lot of money, but always a lot of hard work. My father taught me to believe in myself and work for everything that I want. Nothing will be given to you in this life. So I think my father taught me how to be a good man, a good person, a strong person. So my childhood was a lot of athletics, playing, of course. My father was strong about education. He made me do well in school. I went to University of Houston here. But I think my childhood helped me become who I am today.
Who motivated you to practice martial arts, and why?
Well, my father was a boxer,
Mhm.
and uh, from a very young age, he started teaching me, boxing fundamentals. I went to gyms, boxed through my childhood. And when I began at the University of Houston, a childhood friend of mine was doing something called no holds barred or vale tudo. And so he calls me and he's like, "Hey, bud, I need a sparring partner. I'm doing this no holds barred fight. Can you come spar with me?" I'm like, okay. So this was maybe 1996, somewhere around there. And man, he beat me up. He kicked my legs. He slammed me, took me down. And I'm like, my God, what is this? What is this? I'm just used to boxing. So that was my introduction into mixed martial arts. I always wanted to fight, but in MMA, but my coach said I wasn't ready. Uh, I asked him several times. And then later on in my coaching career, when I first started coaching, I actually got a fight to sign a contract. The fight fell through. So in my eyes, I'm like, you know what? It wasn't meant to be for me to be a fighter. But I think I can make champions just the way I can relate to people, give instruction. I think we all have a role on this earth. We all have a purpose on this earth. And even though I wanted to fight in my heart, I knew I couldn't be a champion. I'm not that great of an athlete, but I knew that I could help motivate and build champions. And I have. So I think I found my role in mixed martial arts as a leader and as a coach.
What were your achievements as an athlete?
Well, I actually could have, for baseball, I could have played at a collegiate level. I chose not to go to those colleges. But really, as an athlete, not a lot. Not some amateur boxing. I had a few kickboxing fights, but and I did okay. But to say I was a champion or did these amazing things as a fighter, not really, man.
So, is it true that a bad athlete will become a great trainer, or a great athlete will not become a good trainer?
Man, like I said, I was okay, but I think like I said, my purpose in life is to be a good trainer. And teaching is something to me that nobody can teach you how to teach. It's something you have to have inside, how to connect with fighters. And I think I have that. That being said, I know world champions that cannot teach or coach very well. Um, so I don't, and I have some world champions that I know that are amazing teachers. So I think they're two totally different things. And just because you're a great fighter does not mean you'll be a great coach. And I wasn't a very good fighter, but I think I'm a pretty good coach. So
It's a
uh,
balanced life.
balance, man. Yes, yes, for sure, for sure.
Okay. So, how did you come to coaching, and why?
It was actually almost the accident, and I think maybe destiny, it's, just meant to be. So the guy that I told you about, that I came as a sparring partner for him back in maybe 2000, 2001 possibly, he's like, hey man, I would like you've been helping me prepare for the fight. I'd like you to be in my corner for this fight. And I'm like, well, okay. At the time, there was no amateurs, it was a professional fight. And I did well. It was just natural to me. I was able to communicate instruction to him. And it's funny, that guy actually became one of my first champions, like the guy that got me into it, the guy that beat me up, one of my first champions. And it was kind of by accident. I remember doing jujitsu at the very first gym I trained at years ago, and my teacher asked me to help some people, new people, and he just said, "Bob, you teach really well," and that kind of stuck in my head, and I just love sharing knowledge. And like I said, but it happened kind of by accident. Once I cornered him in his first fight, it just built and built and built. Now, my education from the University of Houston is in biochemical, biophysical sciences. So I was a scientist before. Before I did this full time, I was a scientist. And I believe that my knowledge of the natural sciences helps me relay information. When I talk with fighters, I talk about the physics of fighting, the science of fighting. A lot of it is here with your heart, but so much is in the brain. And I think my science background helps me relay this information to my fighters.
When did you decide to cease your scientific career?
This September will be 5 years that I stopped as a scientist. And I was making good money as a scientist. I was beginning to make pretty good money as a coach as well. But I would work about 40 to 50 hours in the laboratory, leave, go to the gym till nighttime, or start very early in the gym, then go to my lab, then go to the gym. So my wife, who I love very much, who's so amazing, she was really helped me find my purpose. She suggested that I do it full time, but from a financial perspective, it was very scary. And sometimes you have to make those sacrifices, be afraid sometimes to push you into greatness. And she just said, I need you to be a man and do it. Be a man and do it. And I said, okay.
So she is your coach.
She's my coach, yes, man.
Coach or the coach.
Right. Everybody has to have a coach. But man, I'm very thankful for her. If she had not given me her blessing, her motivation to motivate me, I don't know that I would still be working my full-time job, But I have about 47 fighters right now. We have about 100 at our gym. We have professional boxers, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and MMA. And every day I'm tired when I come home, but every day I'm happy. I'm very happy because I get to be with my friends every day. I get to make my own schedule. It's hard work, but the following your heart is everything, man, everything.
I've mentioned that you make an accent on the family. So are your students a family for you?
I think that's very important. To be a successful coach, in my opinion, you have to be a coach, to express or illustrate technical ability in fighting or technical instruction. But it cannot, in my opinion, be clinical. Okay. So if you were my fighter, I promise you, I will love you like my son. I will do everything I can to help develop you. And you have to have a genuine love for your fighters. It's not about the money. It's about seeing them become successful. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just like I want to see my fighters be could ever be. So yes, I do believe we are a family. Actually, I have a fighter that came to me fairly recently from Tajikistan, Iraj Aliyev. And I always say, man, he's my son from Tajikistan. He's back home getting hurt now. But when he comes back here with his wife, we're going to get him to the UFC. And it's beautiful with fighting. I don't care what color, what race, what religion, where you're from. We have a common love for mixed martial arts, for combat sports. And it's a very beautiful thing. It doesn't matter Jewish, Muslim, Christian, black, white. We all have common goals and common ground, common love. So that love that you have for your children, you give to them, and they fight even harder for you.
Okay. And what difficulties did you encounter in working with students, and how did you solve them?
I don't honestly think that I've had a lot of difficulty from students. The difficulty came from me gaining experience to where, as a younger coach, I've been coaching professionally about 16 years now. Okay. But making bad decisions, taking last minute fights, fighting outside of the weight class, different things. Those have been my biggest, problems, but it was part of my journey, part of learning. So now as a coach, I'm a lot more cerebral, a lot more deliberate in the choices that I make for my fighters. I don't allow them to dictate the decision, because they'll fight anybody, man. They don't care. They're fighters. It's my job to protect them, to be their father, to be their coach, and to save them from themselves sometimes. So I guess to answer your question, maybe the tenacity, the strength of a fighter is something that I have a difficult time with, because they have to listen to me. They'll fight anybody, but I could be like, hey, not now. Maybe in a month or two or 6 months or a year, we'll be ready. But I think my biggest obstacle was me learning how to be a good coach.
Okay. Have you thought about quitting your coach career sometimes?
Never. I do have plans for the future. When I retire from coaching, the UFC has talked to me a lot about being a cut man for them. So after, right now it's a conflict of interest. I'm a coach. I have guys in the UFC, but I think after my coaching days are over, I would like to travel with the UFC a little bit and work cuts and wrap hands and all of that stuff, still be involved. But to answer your question, no, I never considered quitting coaching. I love it very much.
What method have you developed for the most effective approach to your students?
I think it is a positive approach. When I had my boxing coach, my Muay Thai coaches, as when I was a student, they were very, very hard on me, very hard. I knew they loved me, but man, it was a lot of negative reinforcement. I think to really, truly reach a fighter, you have to be tough on them, but you have to show them every day that you do love them and that you're there for them. Positive reinforcement in coaching is huge for me.
What kind of motivation do you prefer in your work? Motivation towards a goal, motivation from a goal?
It's all relative to the individual fighter. Okay, different fighters will have different motivation as to why they fight. Some could be to be champion. Some could be solely as a financial, means to an end. But I get inside the brain of my fighter. You have to know them, what's in their brain, what's in their heart, and know what it takes to motivate each individual, and each one will be different. Okay. For me, the goal is for them to be successful. Okay. To win. It's not money. The money obviously will come with time. The more you win, the more you'll succeed in your career. But each individual fighter has their unique motivation, and it's my job to know what that fighter needs.
What does it mean for you, the victory of your student?
It means everything to me, to see them be successful. Like I said, it's just like seeing your children, seeing your son become a doctor, or, whatever their goals are. To see them win means everything to me. uh, because a lot of them have had very hard lives. You know, some of them could have been in prison, you know, in jail. Some of them could be dead, drug addiction, so many different things. And to see them, a lot of them turn their lives around and become good people, successful people every time they win. It means so much to me to see what a lot of them have overcome.
What does defeat mean to you? When your students got some loss,
Very difficult, you know. MMA is not a sport. Boxing is not a sport. Muay Thai, not so much, where you can't lose very much, man. If you want to be successful, you really can't lose a lot. So, you know, I've had fighters that are maybe one fight away from the UFC, one more victory away, and they'll lose, or fight for a world title and maybe lose. To me, it's a part of it, and I know how to deal with it. You know, for me, it's a part of the game. 50-50 every time. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. But to see the disappointment in my fighters, you know, tears, crying, you know, the pain is very hard for me to see. Like I said, it's like a father. So you know, defeat to me is not a big deal. That's part of it. But dealing with how I approach the fighter that's been defeated is what makes the difference. You have to give them support. You have to continue to give them motivation and positivity. You know, this is what we did good. This is what we did badly in the fight. This is why we lost. And then you have to help them build from there. So, you know, there's a saying, you don't lose, you learn. And I do believe that. You know, every time we take a loss or a defeat, you have to be able to take something positive from it, you know, in that we can grow as fighters.
Mhm, mhm. Do you rely on intuition in your work?
Yes, yes. I rely on the fighter to be intuitive and rely on their intuition with their ring IQ or their fight IQ. And then me as a coach, it's not something when I corner you in a fight, I do have plans, okay? Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. If this fails, then we look for this, this, and this. But sometimes you just have to go with your instinct, with your intuition, like you said, and that only comes with time. I've cornered over 1,000 fights in my career, boxing, Muay Thai, MMA, kickboxing, and you always continue to learn from there. Um, you know, and like I said, the only thing that can do that for you is time and experience.
By the way, returning back to your students, did you expel students?
It has been very rare, you know, that I've had to do that. The only times I've really had to do that, and it's only been a few, is if there possibly negativity or lack of motivation or bad habits, training habits or so forth, bad attendance begins affecting the team. Okay. It's like, you know, if you have cancer, okay, sometimes you might have to chop off the arm to save the body. Same thing with here. If there's a student that's bringing bad energy, bad, you know, negativity to the gym, it will be cancerous. It's going to spread. So I have to get rid of that. But it's been very, very rare in all my years of coaching.
Extraordinary question. I mentioned that you got a diaphragmatic voice. Did you sing?
No, no. I didn't realize that, man. That's good.
Okay. What is your goal for the next 5 years?
The goal in the next 5 years is to have at least 2 or 3 UFC champions, continue building champions in all areas. At the gym, we'll have WBC boxing champions, WBO, WBA. I've got world champions in Thailand in Muay Thai. But to me, the biggest goal in the 5 years is UFC champions. I've had champions in almost every organization, you know, but the UFC, that's the one we still need to get the championship belts for sure. That's my goal. And honestly, man, to just continue to be happy. Just be happy, man.
So what's your hobby?
Honestly, I like to play golf whenever I can. I'm terrible at golf, but I like to play. But more than anything, it's just being with my family. I have grandchildren. I have, all my daughters are grown, and my wife, of course. But I just love spending time with my family when I'm not working. That's I'd say my biggest thing.
Fishing, maybe,
Yeah, yeah,
rafting.
man.
Yes.
Sure, for sure. I love to, man. Here in Texas, hunting and fishing, very, very big, very big.
Mhm, mhm. Do you have any plans to visit Russia in the future?
Man, actually, I have a fighter, female fighter, that had an opportunity to fight in Russia. It was going to be in April, but it actually fell through. But that was going to be my first time. I've been very fortunate to see so much of the world, but Russia is definitely something that I'd love to see. And my fighter, my son, Raj, he says, "Coach, we'll go back. We'll fight in Russia." I'm like, "Let's go, man. Let's go. It'll be fun."
Okay. What Russian authors, writers do you know?
Honestly, I do not know any.
Maybe Pushkin?
Hey, I'll read it. I'll read it for next time we talk. I'll have read some of Pushkin for sure.
Okay. And what Russian biological scientists do you know?
I don't. I really don't. Um, you know, um, in my studies, other than like the Madame Curies and just the like microbiologists and so forth. Um, I remember studying some.
Skłodowska Curie? Curie.
Yes,
Curie.
exactly, exactly. Yes, yes, yes. There's some Russian physicists. I hated physics in college. Nuts. But the Russian physicists are amazing, man. So I remember studying a few. I don't remember their names, some of their work, but yeah, the scientists in Russia, amazing, man, amazing.
Wikipedia is silent about you, but what do you want it to be written about?
Man, the biggest thing for me is to leave a legacy. Like, hey, Bob was a great coach, but he was a a man that loved to help make better people, not just good fighters. That's what I'd like. If there was a wiki on me or on my tombstone, when I die, just Bob was a good coach, but even a better man. I want to help, like I said, build fighters, but make these people good people.
Mhm. Okay, and what would you like to wish Russian-speaking viewers and MMA lovers?
Man, to all the viewers out there, thank you for supporting. I hope to be visiting there very soon. I'm gonna have more and more fighters coming from your area, so that'll be cool. And I love the Russian fans. Their knowledge of MMA is huge. To me, it's similar to like the Japanese. They're very intelligent with how they view fighting. And you guys keep creating amazing fighters, man. You have amazing, amazing fighters coming out of your part of the world for sure. But I wish nothing but the best for you guys, and I'd like to send all of my love and respect.
Bob, thank you. I appreciate that you spent your priceless time.
Thank you.
And the last question that many people are asking about, will Derek and Volkov fight again?
Man, I don't know. Obviously, that's a fight that we would always entertain. Volkov, what an animal, what a monster, man. That guy is amazing. Um, but right now, our biggest objective is fighting for the title at this point. But we never know what the future holds. But Volkov has been doing an amazing job. He was already a great fighter, but I definitely see him evolving as a fighter for sure. So they may definitely meet again.
Mhm. Okay, how do you think is Ngannou comfortable rival for Derek now or not?
Yes, yes, I think so. I think if John Jones doesn't get the title shot, and I think at this point it's a money issue with him, we'll be the ones to step up and fight Ngannou. We fought him before. We won the decision. It wasn't the fight that anybody wanted to see, but as far as it wasn't an exciting fight. But the next time they fight, especially for the belt, it'll be very good.
Thank you very much. I wish you good luck. I wish you have a nice time with your family. and I wish you will rejoice with your students, UFC belts, and more, and so on, so on, so on. And welcome to Moscow. We'll be happy to see you here in Moscow. And
Thank you. I hope to meet you very soon. We'll drink some vodka.
yeah,
We'll drink-
okay. I'll show you hospitality, Bob.
Good.
Thank you.
Have a great one, brother. Have a great one. Good seeing you.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.